Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Happy New Year, everyone. Today, Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive joins me to talk Orange Bowl and take one final look back at our 10-3 season. Let's start the new year by reminding you of our program schedule, though. During the season, we came to you twice a week. Now that the season has ended, we're back on our schedule of one show a week through April. We'll also try to throw in a Michigan Man Extra each month with a guest in the news or someone you might find interesting. May through July, we'll revert to our summer schedule of 2 shows a month. So with that out of the way, it's time to jump into 2017. Sort of. We begin the year by looking back or lamenting the football season that ended last Friday. Jim Harbaugh's second season had a bit of everything, filled with ups and downs. I've been hearing a variety of opinions from fans when it comes to how they feel about the season. I guess it depends if you're a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of personality. Many think the season was better than expected for Jim Harbaugh's second year, that we are ahead of schedule in making this team elite again. Others point to the way the season ended, with so many future NFL draft picks on our roster, and yet we just could not find a way to win the close games at Iowa, down in Columbus, or Friday in the Orange Bowl. Perspective will come and change as we wait through these cold winter months, spring and summer, for the next season. I happen to fall in the glass half full crowd. I thought we would be better this year, and I think we were. We lost 3 games by a total of 5 points. Is that frustrating? It is indeed. But I think our best days are ahead. Nick Baumgardner is in the press box and behind the scenes talking to the players and the coaches all year. He has a much better take on the season that was, the future, and the pulse of Michigan football. He joins me next on our Game Day segment here on The Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. With us here on our Game Day segment this week as we take a look back at the Orange Bowl and wrap up this season, Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. Happy New Year, Nick.
Happy New Year, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir, and I'm sure you're glad to get out of that heat and back to Michigan by now, aren't you?
Yeah, getting back to a real winter, I suppose, right? Getting used to it again.
Well, Nick, we've had a few days now to digest what we saw happen in the Orange Bowl on Friday night, and you can pin that loss in quite a few things when you break that game down, but first and foremost to me, it was that offensive line play. They simply got handled by that Florida State defensive line, didn't they?
Yeah, completely. That was certainly the best defensive front they'd played this season, but that also wasn't a new thing. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't a new problem. That they lost 3 games by 5 points this year, and all 3 of those losses, your offensive line did next to nothing. They weren't protecting, they couldn't run the ball, and with this offense, if you can't run the football in this offense, you don't beat teams. You don't beat good people. I mean, that's the reality of it. So, Michigan's staff can only coach around so many things when, the backbone of your team is running the ball, and they couldn't do anything. I mean, they couldn't set up the pass. They couldn't do anything downfield. Will Display was getting hit almost every time he set into a pocket. So, the offensive line it's funny to think about after all these years, but the offensive line is still somehow the number one item on the to-do list of you have to fix that if this thing's going to go anywhere forward. I really think that with all the young talent they're bringing in, I like the direction of everything they're doing, but that's still a problem, and that's still a thing they got to fix.
Well, watching Florida State's defense on tape, I know for everyone was one thing, but dealing with them in real time turned out to be a whole different deal. Speed. I don't think Michigan had seen the combination of that size and speed all season, Nick. They were impressive and relentless, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State would have been, I guess, the closest thing to that. And again, in the fourth quarter against Ohio State, they weren't able to do much either way, but Florida State was probably quicker in most areas, especially up front. I mean, they were so fast at closing lanes. There were times in the second half where lanes looked like they were opening up a little bit, and they would shut down in a split second. I was curious as to why Chris Evans didn't get more carries earlier in that game, because it seemed like, I kept thinking to myself, that they're going to have somebody with some kind of speed to get through one of these gaps, because when there was a gap there, it's only open for about half as long as it would have been otherwise, because Florida State was, really playing with its hair on fire. So just sideline to sideline, I don't understand why they were trying to stretch them and get outside around the corner with some of those stretch plays. That didn't seem to make any sense to me either. But, Florida State, to their credit, they really fixed their defense. This was not the same defense that gave up 63 to Louisville. They've been playing much better at the end of the season. They were red hot, and for Michigan, it was right there at the end, but just couldn't close it out.
Well, let's talk about Wilton Speight. He was pounded, he was hurried, he was out of sync much of the game, but he is a gamer. We know that. He made some big throws in the fourth, moved in the pocket very well, I think, most of the game just to avoid getting killed, and even ran for a big first down. Your overall take on his performance, Nick?
Yeah, the first half was not good. I mean, he admitted that after the game. Another thing I like about Wilton, he's never one to not tell it like it is. I think he's always done a really admirable job of that. He admitted that after the game, that he was, kind of bailing out of the pocket with his front foot against the rush. I think he was a little too worried about it, he said, in the first half, and that was forcing him to miss some what looked like pretty makeable throws. And then in the second half, I think he decided, you know what, I'm going to get hit anyway, so I might as well just stand in there. And that's a tough decision to make and a tough thing to do for a quarterback, is to just continue to plant that front foot right in the teeth of a rush and know you're going to get leveled. And he started doing that in the third quarter, started making some throws, and Michigan started moving the ball. And like you said, Mike, his feet, he was moving around in the pocket. He got sacked 4 times, and he probably ran out of at least 4 more. So if he was a stationary guy who could move, he'd have been looking at 8 to 10 sacks allowed in that game. So I thought the way he closed the game is sort of the reason why I like where he's at right now as a quarterback, I guess. I like what he did this year. He was much better than I thought he'd be. He's better now than he was at the beginning of the year. I really believe that. I think, like you say, he's a gamer. He plays the full 4 quarters. He plays the full 60 minutes. There's obviously things he needs to improve on, but I think he's a capable leader. I think he's a guy that teammates like. He's a guy that they'll follow, and to play tough like that and to find a way to get through a game where they could not protect him to save anyone's life, and all of a sudden there you are up 2 points or whatever it was, or 3 points, whatever it was, in the final minutes before he let up the kick return. To have that all happen, I mean, Wilton Speight, shoot, he might have been the MVP of the Orange Bowl if they'd have closed the game out. So, a rough first half, but I think he closed much better, and I think what he was able to do, still with a shoulder that's not 100%, what he was able to do toughness-wise spoke a lot about him, where he's at, and I think where he's going.
Well, after the game, my question, Nick, was what could Michigan have done differently to attack that Florida State defense? And, after watching the game another 2 times on Saturday, my conclusion was nothing. Michigan they got dominated at the point of attack, and when that happens, and we just talked about this at the top, that offensive line, that affects everything, and your play calling, your game plan becomes useless if you cannot control that line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I thought about it in the middle of the game, and at first I caught myself thinking, they're not adjusting too much here, and then I stood corrected, because as time went on, it was like, well, I don't know what they're supposed to adjust to. There were times that they tried to get vertical, and it just didn't work, because it was, if he's back there for 2.5 seconds, and you're trying to let a route develop, he's getting 3 guys on him, and he's either got to bail out or he's getting sacked. And, I don't know what all you can do, frankly. That the only adjustment, and they ended up making it, was to get Evans in there and let him, kind of squirt through some of those cracks a little bit quicker. And obviously it worked toward the end of the game. But, other than that, I don't know what else they were supposed to call. I think that at some point, if you can't look at your offensive line that is led by 3 fifth-year seniors and say, we have to start moving the football, and if they just don't respond, I don't know what you do. And that's one of those situations where I'm sure they looked at that offensive line early in the game and said, like, let's go, we got to do this, or we're cooked. And they just weren't able to do it. So, I can't crack on the staff too much for what they called, because I don't know what you're supposed to call. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I just didn't know what else was supposed to work. I heard people say that they need to run some screens. I think you saw they tried a couple screens. They didn't work. None of it worked. And because if you can't protect, then they know you can't run the football. And if you can't run the ball, then, in this offense that requires balance, you're not doing anything. So, I mean, unless you got Andrew Luck or Tom Brady back there, you're going to be in a rough spot. So, again, I don't know what else they're supposed to do other than kind of what they did, kind of coach around it as much as you can, get yourself in a position to win it, and they did that. But the last kick return there kind of sealed the deal.
Well, that defense gave up some big plays, Nick, some chunk plays, but for long stretches of the game, I thought, did a very good job, especially controlling Dalvin Cook. You can only control that guy so long. He's a home run hitter, but I thought they played, I guess we can say, admirably.
Yeah, not their best, but like you said, there was long stretches there where they got them back in the game. They just had more stretches where they were human, I guess, than we'd seen at any point this year. They never give up big plays, and for a group to give up, a 92-yard touchdown pass, a long run, another long pass to Dalvin Cook, and a couple other chunk plays. It really only boiled down to like 5 plays. I think Francois was 9 of 27.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at that number and you say 9 of 27. That must have been, Michigan must have dominated him. But then he had 222 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you say, okay, well, geez, those 9 passes were a problem, and one Dalvin Cook run was a problem, and that was really it. So, overall, I thought they played well. I thought Taco Charlton was really, really good again. Maurice Hurst was really, really good again, although I would advise him to maybe hold off on the sack celebration until the ball is secured on the ground. I think he missed a fumble there he could have probably gotten. But, it came down to just a handful of plays that cracked, and Florida State's got enough athletes to do it. I think Francois can throw a nice deep ball if somebody gets behind somebody. So a couple of miscommunications and a couple lapses, but defense scored a touchdown, got plenty of pressure on the quarterback. Were able to create turnovers, so did everything they could. I think that they had them right there where they wanted them, but again at the end it just couldn't close it.
Yeah, we talked about the speed of the Florida State defense, but on the offensive side with Cook, DeAndre Francois, and that receiving core, that Seminole offense, even though they were contained so much to the game, the difference to me was they have home run hitters, speed guys all over the place at the skill positions.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things where sometimes that ends up being the thing, and then other times if you're communicating properly, you're doing your job. As Jordan Lewis would tell you, that if obviously they were looking for safety help on that big long throw, but he said there were things he could have done to pen that in, and speed's only so good if it's not covered, and of course in a couple of instances there it got open, but yeah, I mean that ultimately is the difference, because if you think about it though, Mike, if they don't have all that speed and they don't have all those home run hitters, they're not scoring at all. I mean, Michigan would have probably just swallowed them right up, but that's another thing too, I guess you can point to, is that Michigan right now, if you flip the ball around, they don't have guys like that. They didn't have a guy like Dalvin Cook who could turn a 3rd and 22 into a 70-yard run. That just doesn't exist on Michigan's roster in its current incarnation or current situation. So maybe those guys are on the way, or maybe those guys are on the roster right now, but just are still developing. But right now with this team, that team didn't have those type of guys. Your offense had to be balanced, and they had to move the ball, on the ground and kind of go in chunks. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those games. It was weird. It felt like if Michigan could have closed it out, they would have maybe stole one. Either way, you look at this season and you say it's 5 points away from being undefeated, but also at the same time, there were reasons why you lost all the 3 games you did, and ways you can improve and get better and fix for next season.
Well, you mentioned Jordan Lewis just a minute ago, Nick. Great player, All-American, great career at Michigan, but he had a rough night, didn't he?
Yeah, Jordan said that he thought that was the worst he's played, or maybe one of the worst. I mean, he probably looked back when he was a true freshman, maybe a couple times where he was out of position more, maybe. But I thought he might have been too hard on himself. I mean, it was one mistake. I mean, the big long bomb was not his fault. That was, they were in a zone. He's supposed to have somebody over the top, and the guy's not there. And what he was saying was, I could have done a better job of communicating, of course, and I could have rerouted that a little bit better, of course, maybe slowed him up. But if your safety that's supposed to be over the top is going the opposite way, and it's not going to roll into his window, there's nothing you can do at that point. That's just a bust, and that's a touchdown going the other way. So that wasn't his fault. The last touchdown pass that was completed over him, however, was one of those where I've seen Jordan Lewis knock that route down, more times than at any point I can remember. And that was just one where I think he said he turned around too quick and was just out of position, and it just was what it was. So, he tipped his hat to the other quarterback and receiver and said that they got him. But probably not his best game, but not a disaster either. I think that he was being too hard on himself. And I think with Jordan, the guy is just, I don't know how many people really totally understand how good he was. He never got beat. I think that's the thing. When we see him get beat, everyone, their eyes kind of wide open as, was that Lewis or was somebody else in the game? Because it just never seemed to happen, especially over the last 2 years. I mean, his technique was always just almost perfect every time. So, him having anything completed against him was kind of the exception to the rule. And so when you see one in the end zone go against him, everyone's, and him himself included, that's always judging him. And he says, I think I had a bad game. Well, I mean, it wasn't a perfect game, but we'd gotten kind of used to seeing him play perfect games, I guess. And, a rough one there in the last seconds, of course, I'm sure he'd like to have back. But, I mean, Jordan was fabulous football player for 2 years. Can't ask for anything better. And I'm sure he'll go on and have a nice, healthy, long career in the NFL.
I would agree with that. With us here on our game day segment as we recap the Orange Bowl and the season is Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. Well, Nick, is as good as Jabril Peppers is, he can't cover the entire field, and I'm not crazy. I think we would have been, of course, much better on the defense if he had played, but not sure that would have really changed the outcome. How much do you think that impacted Michigan's defensive scheme and game plan?
Oh, probably quite a bit. I mean, I think that he's the guy that this is all built around. He was the centerpiece of the whole thing. You hear so many people earlier in the year, carry on about how they thought he was so overrated and his stats were nowhere near as good as they should have been, and this, that, and the other. And then I always tell those people, in some ways you may be right, but there's also situations where you have to think Michigan had the number one defense in the country for all of the entire season, and it was built around Jabril Peppers. I mean, he was the guy that the whole thing was sort of centered around because he was their best athlete and their best player in space. And you look at Friday night's game and you think, okay, well, they lost the game by 1 point. Jabril Peppers is probably worth 1 point on some level, right? I mean, I think he would have been able to do something, whether it be he runs into one of those bad punts and brings it back 20 yards and gets you in field position, maybe you get another field goal, instead of, Jordan, who hadn't returned a punt and maybe his whole career was back there trying to have to deal with it. I think he was more worried about just catching the ball, which of course it makes sense, but I think it was a factor. I think that it was a major factor. I mean, he's their best athlete, and that's not close. I think some would argue maybe he's not their best football player. I think you can certainly make a case he's their best football player. So to not have him in the game, it probably limits what you do with that spot. And Josh Metellus came in and I thought played very well, considering that was his first start. But I doubt Don Brown was asking him to do all of the things completely that they would have asked Peppers to do maybe in those situations. So I think it was a major factor. I think losing Jake Butt to an injury early in the game really hurts, especially in a situation like that where you need your safety valve when you're not getting anything going in the passing game. Yeah, they had some problems to overcome in that one, and it just proved to be a little bit too much, and they go away with a 1 point loss.
And you just mentioned Jake Butt. That was just almost sickening to watch because you knew as soon as he went down, you could just tell by the body language he was hurt. From what I've seen, what I've read in the last day, it's ACL and the surgery coming up, right?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. I mean, I haven't gotten anything more than you've read. I'm sure Michigan hasn't said anything official, but it certainly sounds like surgery's out of the way, which is just, like you said, it's hard to grasp around that, especially in a game like that. It's a bowl game, and they're fun, and everybody wants to play them, and everybody wants to watch them. But at the end of the day, they don't mean that much. They don't mean enough to have a guy have to blow his knee out and have to go through what'll be a long process of rehab again. He's going to have to miss the combine. He's going to have to miss the Senior Bowl. He's going to cost himself a ton of money, and it's hard because he's a really good kid. He's a really good hard worker. He was a senior class award winner. Does everything right. Stands up for what he believes in terms of how the NCAA treats players. Was just talking the other day. I mean, Jake Butt battled a terrible cold or flu or something the whole week. Was down there anyway, practicing through it. And we talked to him on one of those nights earlier in the week, and he said he was going to gut through it. He was going to play anyway, and it's tough. I mean, for a guy to come back in the senior year, the last game of his senior year, for crying out loud. I mean, he could have left last year and been second round pick if he wanted to be. And now he's going to have to go through the whole thing. And I know that he had an insurance policy, but at the same time, I mean, he's going to lose money. He's going to lose a lot of it. And that's not right. It's not fair. And he went through his whole career in the NCAA without earning a dime. And I think that's something that's the second year now. Jalen Smith at Notre Dame last year was higher rated than Jake Butt would have been. But, it's the second year in a row where a guy that was going to be taken pretty high suffers a serious injury in a game that meant nothing. And now has to miss valuable time and is going to drop in the draft. And it's not right. But, NCAA is what it is. That going into it, I suppose. So that's part of the deal. And so I guess we'll see what happens and just hope that no one gets hurt in these games anymore. I mean, it's just terrible to see every time it happens. But I suppose that's football.
Just very difficult to watch. And as you said, he's going to lose a lot. We just have to wish Jake the best. He's a hard worker. He's a good kid. He'll work through it. And hopefully, as he said, good things will happen down the road. Backing up to Jabril for just a moment, Nick. Should I stay or should I go is going to be the question he's asking himself in the next days and weeks. Do you get a gut feel that he's going to pass up those millions to stay for one more year?
I don't. But, he said, I'll take him at his word. He said that he still hasn't decided. And I think he said he was going to take up until the deadline, which is the 16th of January, to make up his mind. I don't know. I don't. He hasn't said anything one or the other really the whole month, the month of December anyway. But, I think that I'll say this, it'd be awfully tough for him to come back and improve his stock. I mean, if he comes back, you saw, like we saw the other day what happened when he got an injury and it was a legitimate injury. Anyone who says it wasn't is just, making stuff up to make stuff up. A legitimate injury that keeps him out of a game and the entire country stops what it's doing and wonders why he's sitting out of a game. The level of scrutiny that this guy is under, if he came back, it would ramp up to levels that I don't think any of us would even be prepared to handle. I think it would be too much. I think it'd be too much to overcome. When you come back, everything you do is looked at so much closer, and it's broken down so much thinner and everything else. I just don't know what he has to gain by coming back. And if it were me, I would go. But I suppose we'll see what he does. I know the degree is important to him, and I'm not sure if he was on track to graduate in 3 years or not. But I suppose we'll see what he does. He's got a couple of weeks here to make up his mind, and then on we'll go.
Well, before the season started, Nick, I think if you told Michigan fans, we'd finish 10-3, we'd beat the Spartans and come within an inch of the playoffs, I think most of us would say, hey, we'll take it. But, the expectations, of course, changed game by game, week by week during the season. So right now, on January 2nd, would you say this season was a success because of the improvement we saw in the field?
I thought it was a missed opportunity. I think that's the best way I've come to describe it. I can't call it a failure, but at the same time, I don't think I would call it, I don't think I would call it whatever we called last year. I think last year you'd say it was a success. They were able to really overperform the expectation that most people had for them in that first year. And then this year, I just looked around. I went out there for practice on Tuesday or whatever it was and looked around at all of these guys. Michigan's going to have 10 guys drafted. That's the reality of the situation. They're going to have a lot of draft picks in this draft, one of the best draft classes they will have had in 10 years. And I thought they were better than 10 wins. I thought they were better, at the end. I thought they were better, a team that I wonder how they're leaving without any kind of trophy, to be frank. So I don't think it was a step back. I don't think it was a failure. I don't think it was a nightmare or anything like that. Perspective says otherwise, but I do think it was certainly a missed opportunity, and one that, regardless of how this thing unfolds going forward, Jim Harbaugh can come back next year and go 15-0 or something and win a national title. I think you still look back at this year and say, well, that team could have done something like that too. So missed opportunity, not a disaster, not a failure. The program, I think, is still absolutely trending in the right direction. They're recruiting their butts off. They've got a lot of young talent on this team right now. You just got to kind of go through the lumps and develop them. I think Michigan did a great job in the last few years of getting a lot of guys who looked like they were going nowhere in 2014 to overperform their talent level and become real players for them. So I think when you look at the way they develop players and you look at kind of the increased level of talent they're bringing in, in the 2016 class and in 2017, yeah, you can only look at it and say that good things are ahead. But at the same time, disappointment, I suppose, in some level, and that it was, a missed opportunity. You were 9-0, and you had a chance to do the whole thing. So, and you come away with none of it. So that's one that'll sting. But as I wrote this morning, it'll sting, but it won't be the same type of desperate, rudderless, terrifying sting that you had in November and December of 2014, where you were going absolutely nowhere and you had no idea what you were going to do to fix it. I think this is the fact that we're talking about 10 wins being a missed opportunity just 2 years removed from that disaster, I think says a lot. And I think it says a lot about where they're going and kind of where they're at.
Well, now we get about an 8 or 9 week break before spring football starts, and we don't know what next season holds, but we do know this: youth will be served. This is going to be a very young team come the fall of 2017, Nick.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. It's going to be the youngest group Jim Harbaugh has been around in a long, long time. I would think, if you think about that, I mean, back to his early days at Stanford, probably you'd be thinking about all the young players that he had probably back then that he was trying to bring up and turn into what ended up being a really good football team there. But yeah, very young football team next year. They're going to have to rely on a lot of young guys, a lot of spots, a lot of talented guys who I'm sure will be better as time goes on. But it's going to be 1-2 where they're going to have to just, kind of take some mistakes and try to coach around them. I mean, that's the best you can hope for sometimes with the youth. Push the right buttons, put them out there, let them learn, and try to coach around whatever mistakes they make, because there are going to be mistakes that are made. You're not going to have the best defense in the country next year, but again, I think you're talented enough to where you can have a pretty good one. So, and we'll see about the offensive line. So yeah, a young football team, but a lot of talent, a lot of potential, and you never know. You never know what happens. I mean, we've seen young teams come up and overperform before, and I certainly think Michigan has the staff to put that together and make a run at it again next year.
Well, before we let you go, Nick, just a couple of playoff questions. Were you surprised how Clemson just manhandled Ohio State?
Yeah, stunned. I was shocked. I don't know what to say about it. I wondered, was the Big Ten, the Big Ten was so highly valued this year. Was it just a total ruse? I wondered if that was too much. I wondered if it was just a bad day for Ohio State, maybe a bad matchup. And I wondered more, how good were they really? How good was everyone else really? I mean, it was really weird, but I think that it must have just been a bad day. I was shocked. I don't think Urban Meyer had ever been beat that bad in any game. So shocking. I expect Alabama maybe to do that to somebody, but not Clemson. That was stunning. No,
I thought after the game, Urban Meyer looked like he was in shock. He said that will never happen again.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the best way you could say it, I suppose, at that point.
I'll throw a little love the way of the Buckeyes. I do think it was a bad day for them, because I had been able to see Clemson several times this year. They struggled with some really bad, mediocre teams. They did not roll this season, but they were just hitting on all cylinders. And, it seemed like when you watched Ohio State this year, even when they struggled, it was like, if nothing's working, just let JT take off and do what he wants. Yeah. Even he couldn't get anything done. So that was...
they can't throw it either. And that's something they're going to have to fix, because they were completely one-dimensional in that game, and that's not going to work against a team like Clemson.
So next Monday, Bama and Clemson. Do you think Clemson's improved enough that they have a shot against Bama?
I mean, they played them to the wire last year, so I wouldn't say that. I would say I would expect them to kind of do the same, but Alabama is just, it's not fair. I mean, I watched them play Washington, and Washington was playing hard. I thought they were in the game. They were focused. They were doing everything they could. And I thought there were times where Alabama looked like they were kind of like, but they were still hammering them. I mean, it was still just this swarm on defense where you can't breathe. And then to have a guy in Bo Scarborough for seemingly the 19th straight year, Alabama has a running back who is 6'3", 250 pounds, and is faster than everybody on the field. I don't know how that happens every year. I mean, it just doesn't seem fair, frankly. And I think Clemson will give them a game, but I don't know how I would pick against Alabama at this point. Alabama looks like the best team in the country by a mile, and I would expect them to win probably by double digits in the title game.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a defense in a long time, maybe ever, Nick, that puts points up on the board like Bama's defense.
Yeah, it's like they're running plays. It's like they're running their own offense on defense. I mean, it happens every week. It seems like multiple times. It's crazy. I've never seen anything like it.
Should be a good game next Monday, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you get a chance to take a breath and get some downtime now that it's over, until spring ball anyway. So As always, thanks for taking time to join us. You're a great guest, Nick, and we're going to get you back on during spring practice, and we'll talk about what's next for Michigan football. So as always, thanks for your time, Nick.
All right, Mike, take care.
News and notes are next here on The Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. On news and notes today, the University of Michigan men's basketball team, 10-4 overall, 0-1 in the Big Ten, after losing the opener in overtime to Iowa on Sunday, will host Penn State in its Big Ten home opener on Wednesday tomorrow night at Chrysler Center. Tip-off is scheduled for 8:36 p.m., with the game broadcast on BTN. Michigan will play the second half of a two-game home stretch, hosting Maryland on Saturday at 3:15 p.m. That game will be on ESPN2 in the only regular season matchup between the two teams. Following the battle with the Terps, U of M will head to Champaign for a matchup with Illinois next Wednesday, January 11th at 8 p.m. at the State Farm Center. That game will be on BTN. Then they'll be returning home to face Nebraska on Saturday, January 14th at 2 p.m., also on BTN. Sophomore Hallie Tome turned in a 37.14 rebound performance as the University of Michigan's women's basketball team took the lead in the second quarter and never looked back in a 73-56 win over Wisconsin on Sunday afternoon inside the Kohl Center. Tome was 13 for 15 from the floor and 11 for 13 from the free throw line, totaling a career-best 37 points in 29 minutes of action. Freshman Kizray Gondrazik joined Tome in double figures, scoring 16 points with 5 boards. Junior Caitlin Flaherty chipped in 8 points, with senior Sierra Thompson going for 3 points and 5 assists. Michigan held a 43-31 advantage on the boards and scored 15 second-chance points in the game. Michigan is 13-2 overall, 2-0 in the Big Ten, and will be back in action on Saturday at Ohio State. The opening tip is scheduled for 12 noon. Michigan hockey claimed third place in the 52nd annual Great Lakes Invitational with a 5-4 overtime win over Michigan State on Friday evening at the Joe Louis Arena. Junior forward Tony Calderon's goal off a rebound at 2:58 of overtime sealed the victory for the Wolverines. Michigan will be back in action on Friday when they travel to Minnesota in a rematch of last season's Big Ten Tournament Championship. They are 8-9-1 heading into this weekend's action. Our free show app is available from the iTunes and Google Play stores, and you can also hear us on iHeartRadio. Like us on Facebook at The Michigan Man, and follow us on Twitter, also at The Michigan Man. It's going to be a busy winter on the Michigan athletic scene with so much to talk about. Basketball and hockey will, of course, be in the forefront, with football recruiting also in the news. Next week, we hope to have basketball beat writer Brendan Quinn from MLive with us, so please join us for that. That will do it for our first show of the new year. One we hope is filled with Big Ten championships and success for all of our teams. Make sure you join us each week for what we think is the best podcast coverage of your Wolverines. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!